So, today we're going to dive into the work of a really radical thinker, Neville Goddard. We're going to break down his core technique for using your imagination, not just to daydream, but to actually, literally reshape your reality, to turn what you see in your mind into what you hold in your hands. All right, let's kick things off with a pretty wild question, and it's really at the heart of everything we're talking about today. What if everything you think of as solid fact, your job, your bank account, your relationships, what if none of that is final? What if it's all just temporary and totally open to change? This quote from Goddard himself just perfectly sets the stage. What he's saying is that most of us are living life completely backward. We look at the world outside, we accept it as the unchangeable truth, and then we react to it. Goddard's whole idea flips that on its head. He says the real creative force, the real power, isn't out there. It's the one inside us that we're almost never using, our imagination. Now, this is the absolute key, the one concept you have to get. When Goddard uses the word God, he is not talking about some being up in the sky. He's talking about a power that is right here, inside every single one of us. And what is that power? It's your own wonderful human imagination. That's the creator. That's the whole shebang. Okay, I know, that's a massive claim, right? So let's make this feel real. Let's get into a story that Goddard himself told. It's just this incredible account of how a young woman went from total despair to getting exactly what she wanted using absolutely nothing but her own mind. So picture this. It's Christmas Eve, supposed to be a happy time, but this 17-year-old girl is just miserable. She's on a streetcar, it's raining, and she's crying her eyes out. Her father had just passed away, she hates her job, and she feels completely and utterly alone while everyone else seems so happy. Her reality just feels awful and permanent. And right there, in that moment of despair, she does something incredible. Instead of just accepting it, she makes a choice. She decides to change the scene in her mind. She tells herself, the rain I feel on my face, that's not rain, it's the spray of the ocean. The tears aren't from sadness, they're from the salt in the air. In her imagination, she's no longer on a streetcar in San Diego. Nope, she's on a ship pulling into the beautiful Bay of Samoa. She lives in that feeling completely. Now get this. Just 10 days later, something totally unexpected happens. A letter shows up. It's from a law firm in Chicago telling her that an aunt she barely knew had passed away years ago and left her $3,000. They'd only just found out about it. The money was hers. And there it is. 1 month after that miserable, rainy night on the streetcar, she was actually on a real ship, sailing into the Bay of Samoa, feeling the very real ocean spray on her face. What she created on the inside became her reality on the outside. So what an incredible story. But you're probably asking, okay, how does she actually do that? And how can I do it? Well, that brings us to the actual practical step-by-step method that Goddard taught. All right, here's the playbook. First, you have to know exactly what you want. No vague wishes. Get specific. Second, you create a very short, simple scene in your mind that implies your wish is already a fact. Third, and this is so important, you do this right before bed, in that drowsy, sleepy state. Why? Because your conscious, critical mind is shutting down and your subconscious is wide open. Fourth, you lie there, physically still, and you just loop that little scene over and over. And fifth, you feel the reality of it. You feel it in your bones until you drift off to sleep, still living in that fulfilled state. And this right here, this is the whole secret. There's a huge difference between thinking of your desire and thinking from your desire. Thinking of it is like window shopping. You're here, and the thing you want is over there. It just creates more longing. But thinking from it, that means you mentally move into the state of the wish fulfilled. You're not looking at the goal anymore, you're looking at the world from the perspective of someone who's already achieved it. One is daydreaming, the other, Goddard says, is creating. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and get even more practical. How does this actually work for things that people want every day? Let's walk through a few concrete examples that Goddard himself gave. The trick is to find a short sensory act that implies it's done. So if you want a new house, don't just picture the outside. Imagine you're already living there, lying in bed, feeling the sheets, smelling the air in the room. For a promotion, don't just see the new job title. Feel your boss shaking your hand and hear them say, "Congratulations, you got it." And for a partner, Goddard's famous example was to imagine the feeling of a wedding ring on your finger. Feel the solid weight of it until it feels absolutely real to your sense of touch. Now, Goddard also had this other incredibly powerful tool. He called it the law of revision. The idea is you never go to sleep letting the negative events of the day be the final word. Instead, before you sleep, you replay any part of your day that you didn't like, but you rewrite it. You change the scene in your imagination so it unfolds exactly the way you wished it had. And this story just shows you how potent revision can be. There was a grandmother who hadn't spoken to her daughter-in-law in 2 years. So for 7 nights in a row, she revised that reality. She imagined holding and reading these loving, wonderful letters from her family, and she felt all the joy and relief that would bring. And then on the 8th day, the real world caught up. A letter arrived in her mailbox with notes from her daughter-in-law and grandson that were almost word for word what she had imagined. So when you start to actually use these techniques, it really goes beyond just a cool manifestation trick. It starts to fundamentally shift your entire understanding of reality and your place in it. Goddard loved to quote the poet William Blake. And this line, wow, it just sums up the whole philosophy. The idea is that this physical world we see, it's not the primary cause of things. It's a shadow. It's a projection of what's really happening on the inside, within our own imagination. The real world, the creative world, is within you. So if we just take that idea seriously, even for a moment, it leaves us with this huge, powerful, and maybe even slightly intimidating question. If your life and everything in it is just a shadow being cast by the activity inside your mind, what shadow are you casting right now? And more importantly, what will you choose to cast next?